here for Where We Work. I'd like, if you haven't already met Pam in our general sessions, Pam Neckar from Impact Project Development. She's the founder and CEO of Impact Project Development, a company dedicated to fostering a positive culture that promotes financial strength. 25 years of experience in the design industry. She has led roles as the owner, chief financial officer, and director of human resources. She understands the importance of details, but emphasizes that the connection to those details is what truly drives success. Pam's put together an incredible panel this afternoon. Thank you all again for being here. Pam.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me from the speakers? Yes. We're good. Can you fix the heat? Yes.
Kevin's working on it.
Great, welcome. And first I want to, in a minute, I'll introduce the panelists, because really this isn't about me, it's about them today. 53% of workers are hybrid. How does that impact our industry? That's what we're going to talk about today. And I don't know, but if y'all saw the keynote, like, there's so much more to talk about than where we work, but it's about how we work, right? And so with me here today, I have Jennifer Horvath, President of DesignGroup, Paul Schmidt, Master of Construction, and Brian Nost with Schaefer Engineering. So we're gonna play the Minty game. It's gonna keep us warm. We're gonna do it. And the first thing we want to do is we want to know who's in the room. So once you're all in, looks like it's in. Can you see it?
We're all set.
We're all set? All right, who's in the room? Where are our owners and our architects, engineers, contractors, trade contractors?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We got about 11 on the construction side, and 11 on the design side, and one affiliate. Perfect.
We win.
Not that it's a competition.
It's always a competition.
Yes, so sorry. Can you give the number for the engineering? It's 49040957. Thank you. Great. All right, everybody in? So who's in the room? And what are we here to talk about today? We're here to talk about employee performance. And I kind of wrote that's great. Hey, can you do anything about the heat? That is good. We'll do our part. You guys do yours. So let's hear from the panel, and I want you all to introduce yourself a little bit more with that, right? You know, what do we talk about? What makes your employees happy? How do you measure engagement? But let's start with, who are you and what makes you happy about your job?
Is that the handoff to me?
Let's hand up to you.
As Pam said, Ryan Konst, Executive Vice President, Schaefer, structural engineering firm. My role, structural engineer by trade, I'd say what makes me happy, I think it's probably evolved over the years as my role with the organization has evolved. I think I got involved with the industry maybe as a lot of other folks because I like the built environment. It's tangible. You get to see it. It's cool. Everything we do, you know, just we can see it throughout the communities that we live in, which I think is also interesting as we move into hybrid discussion. But I would say now, where I'm going now, it's more for me about company growth. I love pushing. I love affecting change, and I love pushing our organization forward. That's what makes me happy. That's what I love to do. That's why I show up and wake up every morning.
Jennifer, what makes you happy?
Oh gosh, we're going to be a little bit of ditto here. It's hard not to ditto what Ryan said. But I'm Jennifer Horvath. I'm the president of DesignGroup. I'm the non-traditional person on the panel. I am not a technical engineer or contractor. I actually started my career in corporate America, and then I transitioned over to the construction world as a project manager and an estimator, and now I find myself president of an architecture firm. So what makes me happy about my career right now is, I think the slide that you had up there before, it's the building and growing teams. It is our single most important job as a leader of our organizations, is building and growing the teams that we have. That is the assets that we have in our industry, and it's ever challenging and changing.
And Paul Schmidt, I'm a vice president with a Messer Construction Company. I lead our Central Ohio operations here. I'm really glad that my architect and engineer counterparts could actually join us in person. I thought they were actually going to be remote for this, but this is great. We're gonna have a great conversation here. We can see each other face to face. But yeah, so I've been with Messer for 23 years. It's all I've known. I've grown up through the company. So obviously something is going on there that's making me happy. And it's certainly not one specific thing that I could call out, but it's definitely a combination of things where it's just been a very, very complimentary to my personality, I think. You know, first of all, the growth path, right? It's always been very clear at Messer that there is a path. There's opportunity and there's support. It's just been up to me to kind of walk the path, right? Anytime that we have an achievement at Messer, it's always a team achievement. It's not personal achievements, and I've always appreciated that along the way. There's a culture there. You know, we saw culture is high on the slide there. In our case, it's really defined by an employee ownership structure that we have. I get very honest feedback along the way. Right, all my coaches and mentors along the way, they're not shy about giving me feedback, and I've always appreciated that. Maybe the last thing is I'm really not in competition at Messer. Personal growth leads to company growth, leads to happy employee owners at the end of the year, and that's regardless of who's vice president of Central Ohio. So, you know, that has led to a company where we're 1,600 employees overall. We've got 26 executive officers of the company, and all 26 of them have a different last name and have a different background. And it's just a very fun thing to be part of.
Awesome. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now we want to hear from you just for a second. What makes you happy in your career? Yeah. I'll come over. Jennifer. Your career has evolved. So why are you happy?
Okay, so you led in with that. My career has evolved. So I recently transitioned over to OSU, so new to the owner side. I've been Director of Projects with FDC just for about 8 months now on the Med Center team. But previous to that, I was almost 10 years at DesignGroup and have over 25 years as an architect in private practice. So and during that time, my time as an architect was a little bit unique in that I spent a great deal of it in construction phase and even had the opportunity to be fully embedded with the construction team that finished out James Outpatient Care. So 100% on site as this, significant work was being completed. So I've had great opportunity for perspective from the side of the architect, the CM, and now the owner. Along the way, I think what has always made me happy is just the contribution, that acknowledgement of being integral to the success of the project. And I don't mean that in leadership acknowledging me, but being able to feel the contribution, like knowing that you are bringing value to what it is you're doing. I believe that what makes us happy in our work and makes us want to stay with our work are not necessarily those like tangible compensation. What's your benefit package? Do you get, I like to think that it's not just about being able to work at home, but feeling really integral to the success of what your organization is trying to achieve feeds our sense of purpose. And I think that's why we get up every day. I think it's our species. It's who we are, but we need to feel that way.
Absolutely right. Someone over here. Chris, why are you happy at work?
I'm just generally happy as it is. For me, I'm one of the co-owners of VOC Associates, so we help healthcare laboratory projects activate and relocate. And I think, for me, it's twofold. One is seeing the impact, and having the flexibility to change things that we see aren't either going correctly or that can be improved upon. So like today's technology discussion earlier, the keynote, is a great roadmap for us. And because we're a small organization, 13 people, we're able to make those pivots and do things that even some bigger companies don't do. So we, with our employees, tend to focus on like personal, professional, financial goals. So we've done some things that, like in regards to employees buying their house and needing advanced bonuses and things of that nature. So I think some of it is the impact of it overall. And then for me personally, being able to make sure that we update and change our practices when we see something that has room for improvement. So whether it's a piece of software, whether it's a new process that we learn at an event like this, we can implement those things quickly and easily. And usually the hardest part is just getting the owner to accept it and buy into it, especially when they acknowledge that their practice is kind of broken. So, but it is fantastic seeing owners, really truly have true successes just based on, our influence and our ability to execute on the projects for them.
Awesome. I don't know, guys. Did anyone talk about being in the office? Is that a requirement? Is that a requirement to be happy in your work? Let's think about how we spend our day. How we spend our day when we're engaged and happy. So Gensler did this, published this report a couple months back, and the orange is working alone, then working with others in person, working with others virtually, learning and socializing. So the most engaged employees, which is at the top, spend twice more time socializing and learning. There was a lot of that in what you all said. Those connections, that learning, that growth. We're hungry for it. So does it matter where we are? We asked this question to the group earlier about your office environment, pre-COVID to today. It's just down the middle, and I'll read the question in case you can't from the back of the room. The amount of time we spend together collaborating is the same. The energy level in the office is the same. So why is there all this discussion about where we work? So while we have the panelists discuss what their policies are about where they work, what makes their employees happy, we want to hear from you at the same time as where do your employees work? Ryan, what's it like at Schaefer?
It's a great question. I'll come at it from a couple different ways because I have a unique experience myself in my journey. I've worked in all of our offices and also as a remote employee, but our in-office policy is 2 days a week in the office for general employees. We ask that mentors and mentees, managers spend 3 days a week in the office as part of our hybrid work policy. But we do hire full-time remote employees. 15%, 18% of our staff right now is fully remote. I'm one of those technically now. I've worked in all of our offices, all 3 of them across the country, and I am now a remote employee. So it's interesting getting to play that role across the board. So that's our policy.
We purposely picked this panel because we are a gradation here. Ryan is really the most extreme. I'm kind of in the middle, and Paul's on the other end. So our policy is 3 days a week in the office, 2 days a week at your discretion. Our policy is really the most important thing is serving our clients first and meet the client where they're at. We have no days that are set that you need to be in the office or not in the office because your client meetings and the demands that the client has might be on any day. So there's really no set number of days that you need to be in there. I think you asked like how satisfied or what did the employees say? We did an employee engagement survey and 80% of our employees thought that having hybrid work created better satisfaction in their job. So it's a reality for, at least for me, in my 60-person architectural firm. And we're competing against large architectural firms in the thousands.
Okay, excuse me. So to the other extreme here, right? You can't build buildings from home, right? That's really all I came here to say, right? At this point, I can just do the mic drop and walk out of the room, but you can't build buildings from home. And fortunately for us, our operations people understand that. Our engineers, our managers, they want to be boots on the ground out on our job sites, right? But we do have support departments as well, right? We've got the ITs, the accounting, business development, and the list goes on. And coming out of the pandemic, right, we found that our support departments really desired it more and expected it more. So, initially this was kind of problematic for us. We're thinking, okay, are we really going to create a policy that's different for a portion of our employees when those in operations really don't have that choice and can't do it? We had a lot of debate about it. Where we ended up with it, I would call it a compromise. So our support departments, those that can work remote, we do have a policy where they can do that 1 day a week. And most of them take advantage of that. It's at their choice, and they have to schedule it with their managers. But people in operations that cannot take advantage of that, what we also did is we created an additional benefit for them, right? And it really had to do with our vacation policy, making it a little bit more attractive, a little bit more flexible to the people in operations. So when we rolled it out, there was something for everyone, and that really went over just fine. But sitting here, yes, we're at the opposite end of the spectrum. And when they asked me to be part of this, it's one of the reasons I wanted to participate is just to ask you guys, how do you do it, right? Because I wouldn't necessarily say that I have trust issues, but, right, I mean, thinking about our employees, where they're not in front of me for that, extended period of time, there's no way you can convince me that people are not doing other things, right, if they're sitting at the house. And, I've come to grips with that. I've made my peace with it. In our environment, it's really not that problematic with the 1 day a week. And, we still have a structure where we can stay on top of it. But assuming I'm not the only one in the room that might have some trust issues, right, I'm just wondering how the rest of the world kind of deals with this.
Let's look at the results.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, me too. Me
Shocked.
too. My mouth.
Right. Right.
Fair. That's fair.
I'm kind of curious on the design and engineering side, though. Are there folks in the room that are on design and engineering that are 100% in the office?
We have the three in the office. We're design engineer, carpet engineer, and we have the option to be at home. And what we're finding too is some of our younger engineers that went through COVID. I'm not loud enough. You have to talk. Oh yeah, with the thing, yeah. That they want to be in 5 days a week. They said, I went through COVID, I did school during remote, I'm sick of being remote, I want to be in the office. And then I think our policy is that first year that you start, you're in the office every day, so you can have that mentoring one-on-one with your mentor. And it seems to work well. But we give them the option, but we're seeing staff that want to be in the office. And that's sometimes a good interview question too, like, here's our policy, what do you want to do? Let them kind of react.
I'm now a sole proprietor, and I can't wait to have an office. But PTA, what's your policy?
All right, so PTA Engineering, we're a MEP engineering firm. We are 100% in the office. We have a young staff, very young. You've met them all. So mentoring, collaboration, it's just much more effective in person. Culture's a lot easier to build. So there's a lot of reasons that we're 100% in the office. And we really haven't had anybody protest it, really. I think most of our staff seems to enjoy actually coming in the office and, you know, seeing each other face to face and that kind of collaboration in person.
That's very interesting. I've also heard that some firms, design firms that did have complete flexibility are changing their mind on that, right? They're changing their mind on that. Let's dive into this topic a little bit more. We did the where you work. Many people are afraid, to use another word from our keynote. It's going to impact training. Does it make it harder, or does it make it easier when you have people that aren't necessarily always in the same room? Is it harder? What are you guys seeing from a training perspective?
You want me to jump in?
Let you lead this one.
Okay. We were kind of fascinated. So we started our mentorship program, a formal mentorship program in 2019, so pre-COVID. And we had 100% participation, employee-led mentorship program. And the fascinating thing about it that we learned is that we thought typically pre-COVID, we had very localized mentor relationships. If you were in said office, you had a mentor in that said office. More than 47% of the folks intentionally sought out people that were in different offices, in different locations for their mentor. So they were actively seeking a more virtual mentorship process and with a more diverse audience.
And maybe what I'll do is just reinforce the importance of being on-site, boots on the ground relative to training, mentoring, and coaching. I mean, it's the most important thing that we do on a day-to-day basis for our employees. It's really non-negotiable. That's one of their responsibilities. And really, when you think about the responsibilities of our people, and right, it's a team environment for them, right? It's a team environment. They're boots on the ground. They're problem solving. They're doing it in the moment. Things are coming to them. They have to resolve problems in order for things to continue on the job site. There's really no time to spare. Their situational communication they got to be able to deal with. They got to be versatile in the way that they communicate. We're doing high risk activities, and really it just reinforces that everyone has to be in the job site, and it's the right environment to be doing it in a team environment, right?
Sure. So interesting because we started all of this prior to the pandemic. We started hiring full-time remote employees in 2018. We'll get to it in the recruiting part of this conversation, but because recruiting was so difficult for engineering, we started hiring full-time remote employees anywhere in the country back then. And because of that, we were already all on Zoom. Well before the pandemic hit, we were already mentoring we had mentor-mentee relationships across offices. We work share across offices. All of that was happening before. So when it moved into the pandemic, it really didn't change the dynamic for us drastically. I think the reason we ask for our managers, our mentors and mentees to be in the office 3 days a week is sometimes you just need to overhear conversations. You need it's all the intangible stuff, but not the direct mentor-mentee relationship, because they are quick to jump on Zoom, have conversations. I think it still happens. Might even happen more than before. I don't know. I don't have proof of that. I feel like it's still it does what we need it to do either way. But yeah, I don't think it's really moved the needle for us since the pandemic and going to a hybrid work.
Let's go to recruiting. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I mean,
Is it easy? Is it hard? We heard it from Matt. They're asking.
it was really hard back in 2018. We were really struggling. We couldn't find a certain level of individual, and I think everybody at that time was feeling the PM level folks, right? The folks that we all lost in 2010, 8, 9, 10, 11. They didn't have that. That was a hard group to find. We found it through remote hiring, through folks around the country that were looking for something different. We aren't hiring young folks remote. They have to be of a certain level, and most of them are at that PM level and up. So we were able to fill that need that way, created a really robust local campus ambassador program through bringing on young folks, but those are mostly in office. Those are all in office folks coming into our local offices. So our recruiting, I would say we have been able to fulfill our recruiting needs much easier over the last 2 or 3 years than previous.
I would echo that. And in fact, we are doing so more successfully in less time, because our recruiting pre-COVID was more localized. Now we've got a much larger pool that we're pulling from. We really saw a big change in 2024. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this, but we were able to fill 7 positions and do so in half as much time, because technology has changed. We're doing a lot of virtual career fairs. We're doing a lot of virtual meetings. So the time that we're taking to have a candidate that starts the process to come through the entire process is now 2 weeks. It's about half of what we experienced pre-COVID. I will say that we're also experiencing some cost ramifications. Maybe I should save this for later, but recruitment costs are increasing significantly. Obviously, salaries, we can get into that in the cost side of things, but the cost to recruit has increased post-pandemic.
Yeah, and for us, the recruiting hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, our strategy is hiring at an entry level, growing our people from within the company. So the good news is for us, there's no lack of talent from our feeder schools looking to come into this business. Really, our biggest strategy is using our co-op programs, right, as the recruiting effort. And that's where we're putting our focus. The pool's there. And again, fortunately, they understand that they're getting themselves into a career where they're going to be boots on the ground in the field. So it's really nothing that's changed for us post-pandemic.
Let's hear from the audience a little bit. What are you seeing? Yes, Whiting-Turner. I hope that you're going to address what you're seeing as an effect of, Whiting-Turner, and we'll ask Messer to answer this question too. So more often than not, it appears that the designers are hybrid and the CMs and the trades are not. And when it comes to recruiting and training, I want to know, are the CMs seeing an impact on that? So I want all the CMs in the room to think about that as we hear what's happening at Whiting-Turner from a recruiting and mentoring standpoint.
Yeah, so I get to get involved quite a bit. The co-op program, like Paul mentioned, is a big thing for us because we also try and grow ground up. And it is not uncommon that we get the question in the interview process, what is your policy on work from home, hybrid, and the same? Typically, my canned answer is, I would hope that you would want to be in the mix with your team, shoulder to shoulder, communicating, learning. And on the note about training, I think the biggest thing we see is, and maybe not that dissimilar from anybody else in this room, is we're often a conduit for communicating. And the way that you communicate on either end of that line of transmission can be different. For an example, if we're speaking with a trade partner, we may be conducting ourselves in a certain way. Maybe you open the conversation, boy, that Browns game, woo, that was a tough one. Meanwhile, when you're communicating with the owner or client on the other end, maybe it's more professional, maybe it's done in a different way. And what we find is that this is such a people business that there's a lot of training that's done by osmosis that is not necessarily, hey, this is how we do this, stick and brick every step in the way. A lot of it is how do we actually communicate with people? How do we, and I think Paul said as well, like having a little bit of empathy in there as well. If we're putting somebody under duress, maybe we're under duress, and our young people seeing how our more veteran people attack those kind of situations in a very professional manner, I think is extremely important. So we really do try to emphasize shoulder to shoulder, getting after the work, feeling the energy, feeling some of that urgency, and we think that's a really good positive thing. But the question does come up certainly all the time of if we have a policy, and that's typically how we try and answer it.
Anyone else want to comment?
So we have, is it on? Okay, so we have about 23 project managers on our team. We have a 1-day can work from home option. So 4 days in the office, and typically that work from home day is a Friday. Our project managers do have enough, e-builder time, anyone who's worked at OSU, that they can fill a Friday, not without difficulty from home. But our team is also very young, and they execute a ginormous volume of work over the course of the year. So they are continually problem solving. And what I have witnessed is such amazing team cohesiveness from the proximity to each other. They rely on each other for, that on the fly kind of mentoring, the team support and help that they get from each other that happens purely organically because they are in proximity to one another. And the sense of happiness that they get out of, coming out of that, we all know that projects are so dynamic, things are changing all the time, and it's very stressful. And to be able to come, return to their office space and have a comrade right there who's going through the same thing, it releases stress. I think that it helps build joy around their work. And I think it's a huge factor to the success of our team that they are together in person.
I think this is great discussion on the lead by example, but one more point to it is really a great way for our people to learn is we let them make mistakes, right? And we let them make mistakes, but we don't let them fail. So the team's there. You can't be looking over their shoulder, and you got to let them make a mistake, but you can't be too far away to that mistake, turns into a failure, right?
Yeah, I wanted to answer your question about the impact that the construction managers or trade partners might be seeing from the remote work. And this is not a 100% vetted scenario. I'm in the middle of exactly this, but it became very apparent very quickly on a project that I'm working on right now, 2-year design process, that the collaboration and the coordination was not what we were used to seeing. And we've just recently gotten construction documents, and the cracks in the coordination are very apparent every day to a level that we're not accustomed to seeing because they were all fully remote through the design process. And so I'm in the middle of maybe love to find an end result on what the impact overall to the project is as we work through construction, but there definitely has been an impact to the design.
It'll be interesting. I asked the insurance company, are they seeing any increase in claims and things of that nature? And it's still too soon to tell. They are seeing an uptick in notices. I forget what they call them because now I'm not in it every day. When they think it's going to become a claim, they're seeing a big uptick in that, and we had a little bit of conversation about that. So it'll just be really interesting to see how things evolve from a recruiting standpoint and a training standpoint. But what really matters is what we do, right? How productive are we? And how are we growing as an industry? If we're in the bottom quartile of profitability, where are we getting the profits to invest in the technology and the new things? The way that we work is different today, right? It is different. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we're working differently and what that looks like from a productivity standpoint.
Yeah, we're all hours, right? So as an engineering firm, we bill hours. So if you're checking quality, if you're checking project profitability, those are how you really check productivity for us. I mean, there's time put in, there's time put out. We have so much budget. How's it working for you? Our revenue factor has gone up. Interesting. Not exactly sure where the time is and what the reason for it is. It has started to tick up, but I believe people are more efficient while their heads are down and maybe doing other things on the overhead time, which is causing an increased revenue factor, but it hasn't drastically changed our overall profitability one way or another. So project profitability has been good. You know, our highest profitability year was the pandemic. By far, everybody was at home and our profitability was really high. We haven't, outside of that, haven't seen, if I compare it 4 years prior to now, haven't seen a drastic change one way or another. I can attribute some fluctuations like anything else. But I think our people's productivity has been really solid because they're accountable to every hour that they bill. And if the project gets sideways, we're going to know about it pretty quickly and address it.
I'll piggyback because Ryan and I's businesses are similar in terms of being hours driven. We really can't attribute any lack of any productivity issues with hybrid work. But we can say, because we spent a lot of time really looking at data in preparation for today's panel, is that really during the pandemic, and even we're now starting to come out of it, we have seen a fairly significant increase in smaller projects. So that fragmentation of our workforce is significant, but it's not necessarily due to how we're working. It's due to the economy. It's due to the amount of projects and the size of projects that we're seeing as a result of coming out of the pandemic.
And I'll try to talk about what I think about when, productivity, profitability for a construction manager on the job site, maybe tie it back to why we have to be there on site. Right? The one thing that every contractor has in common that's on that site, generally speaking, is that we were the least expensive option for the thing that we're doing. Right? So, you get the great news, congratulations, you're awarded the job, then you immediately start thinking about, all right, what did we screw up? What did we miss? I was so much lower than Whiting Turner on that proposal. What did we mess up? But that's how we compete. It's on our fees, it's on our staffing costs, it's on the length of that project. So to maximize the profit, we're lean, we're being more efficient, and we're being highly productive. There's really two types of productivity here, and the one you guys relate to, it's the number of hours on the job site. Well, the number of hours that people are spending on the job site, to me, it really has nothing to do with the skill of the craftspeople that are putting it in place. It has to do with the condition of the work site, right? Is the work being sequenced correctly? Is it organized? Is it clean? Is it safe? And when you stack up all these conditions correctly, everyone on the job site is being productive and they're being profitable. What does it take in order to stack those conditions up? Well, quite honestly, it usually takes an army, right, to make sure we stay on top of it. A lot of times it takes an army that's even bigger than the staff that you propose to do the job. So it just reinforces, right, that's productivity. You got to be there. You got to be on site so it doesn't get out of control. Because the other type of productivity to really talk about, it's really just our ability to problem solve. And I think we heard it back there a little bit too. We don't live in this world where you get to hit a refresh button each and every day on all the problems, right? Just more stack up on top of each other. And our people have to be able to deal with those. They have to be able to get them off of their plate. And what happens if it gets too much for them, you're not going to let a job fail, so you're going to put more resources, you're going to put more staff on that job. And that's one of the quickest things that can eat up profits and, you know, and turn a job around on us. So time is of the essence on every problem that comes across our table. Our people have to be boots on the ground in front of it to manage it.
Are those people working more hours now than they were before the pandemic? Let's talk about overtime.
Talk about overtime. So why does it feel, why does it feel like the more these guys work remotely, the more overtime I work?
Oh, that was hard.
No? I'm just kidding on that. I just wanted to see the reaction. I honestly don't think that's the truth. I mean, we could spend another whole session on overtime. I mean, there's a lot of things that, you know, contribute to overtime, economic conditions, you know, if something's off track on the job site or not. But I certainly can't point towards the fact that a lot of our other stakeholders around us are doing more work as one of those reasons for overtime.
I think Ryan and I collaborated a little bit ahead of time. We're seeing work-life balance in terms of coming out of the pandemic and what are employees saying. Work-life balance matters, and it matters differently post-pandemic. So in terms of numbers, there are more employees that are working 40 hours a week, and we are seeing less overtime hours.
Paul, same team. We're all same team here, same team. Yeah, so what we've seen is those that embrace overtime and like to work the extra hours are maybe working more hours. Those that were maybe working a few extra hours are now right down to the 40 number. So we're seeing a larger number that are just hitting that 40, the work-life balance, and I'm seeing kind of the extremes open it up where you have the group that works 50 plus and then a whole big group that's right on 40 on the number. So it's been interesting to kind of see that divide happen. And I don't know if that's, we've had a lot of conversations internally, team, pick up the slack for somebody else. Why are you guys not letting these individuals work 55, 60 hours and not picking up a few hours here across the board? And it's work life. It's now set up where they believe that's what makes them happy. That's where they are. And so we either have to figure out whether or not we hire additional to pick up the slack or allow those folks to potentially burn themselves out. So.
When you see the 50 plus and the 40, does that mess with the culture at all? Or
It's a good question. No, it has not. I wouldn't say it's messed with the culture. I do see some managers sometimes with the conversations of pushing, why can't your team maybe take on a little more, and some of that happens, but not a lot. I generally think the people that are working those hours are happy doing it, and based on our comp structure, they get compensated to do it. So for whatever reason, maybe their motivation is financially driven, where I have extra expenses trying to put a kid through college. I'm going to work 60 hours because I'm going to make the extra money, and I like doing it. Hard to say, but no, it hasn't. I wouldn't say it's really affected the culture.
I would say yes, it does. I think that implicitly we do have those happy to work extra hours that puts that bias on that entire workforce. What we typically see is the 50-plussers are the managers. The 50-plussers are the managers. So when the manager's working 60, 70, sometimes hours a week, and then the entire team is checking out, they feel like I'm not going to get ahead if I don't put in the hours that my manager is. It's something that we don't love to talk about, but I would say that it's hard not to deal with that and embrace that. So we do have, how we deal with that is having candid conversations with the manager and how they set up, times at which they're sending emails are important, especially for their teammates, to not put that pressure on the fact that they're working so many extra hours.
And I'm curious if those managers are taking on that extra work because they're afraid to infringe on somebody's work-life balance, and they don't want to have that difficult conversation.
Yes, sometimes.
Another food for thought. I have a client, and they're working on average 36 hours a week, and that's what they want. They do not want 40 hours a week. And I'm like, okay, well, when you look at your revenue potential, that's a whole extra person, right? So it's just going to be interesting to see to see what happens. So let's talk about how productive are these hours. So if overtime is down in the design world, what are you seeing from a utilization standpoint?
Okay. I would say that utilization is down for us as well, but it's because we're investing in training and pursuing work. So there is a yin to the yang. So that reduction in utilization for us is meaning more time spent training the workforce and then more time chasing the smaller projects that we're seeing post-pandemic. Again, we're starting to see the curve, you know, the curve bounce back a bit in 2024, but there was a marked difference in our utilization over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I put up there ours has decreased a little bit as well from a utilization standpoint, but you know, when I talked earlier, I was talking about productivity, and I believe our project profitability on an individual basis is higher than it's ever been. But if I look at the utilization, which just means our firm profits have been fine, but utilizations are dropping just a little bit. So I think people are less efficient when it comes to overhead tasks and some of those things we're trying to get them to do. But when it comes to the project work, they're just fine or even doing better when the head's down working, when it's time, you know, for the rubber to hit the road when it comes to project stuff. And like Jennifer, we are also investing heavily in a lot of those overhead type tasks to improve our organization and grow. So.
When they asked me this question, I honestly had to look up what utilization meant to the design world. I'm being honest there. Hopefully I'm not the only contractor in the room that it's like, okay, at least let's see what Google is telling me about this. All right, and they explained it to me, all right, are hours getting billed to projects, right? Or you got non-millable stuff you're dealing with. Okay, now it's starting to equate to my world. So, I mean, no, there's no changes. We deal with situations where we put project teams out on project sites. So I really haven't seen any differences post-pandemic on this for us.
Very interesting, because so now we want to hear from you guys about what's happening in your world. The QR code is up there in case you went away. Are your projects on budget? Are your people working overtime more than they have been? And what about your billable utilization rate? Is it higher than it's ever been? Because we've eliminated all the BS, we've eliminated all the noise. There's no more office hoppy hours. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Absolutely. You're less time spending on your culture, or are you spending more time on your culture? More time connecting with your employees? What are you seeing? Kind of right down the middle. It'll be interesting to see how this shapes out and how this new way of working impacts our profitability and our cost structure. So in the early morning, these were the results, and I'm putting it up here because we didn't talk about the last one. The ratio of office-related overhead costs to revenue, is that changing? And for the group overall, it was staying about the same. But, you know, if I put I used to be the CFO hat on, and utilization is going down, and the amount of hours that we're working is going down, and people are in the office and out of the office, and you're buying 2 monitors, or are you buying 4 monitors, and da-da-da-da-da, and we all know what's happening with software. Like, we're all in the wrong business because they've figured out how to get us on monthly fees for absolutely everything under the sun. So what's happening? What are you seeing from a cost structure and changes to our cost structure?
I guess I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
I'm surprised that was in the middle for that last, because for me it just feels so obvious that from a managing the business perspective that our costs are 100% up from the pandemic. Our salaries are significantly higher. Some of our newest employees that enter the field, we are paying 18% more for that same employee now versus 2 years ago. And we're paying the same amount really for rent, but I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that company culture is so important. So we're really investing in our offices. So while the people that about a half of our folks are in the office, that space, we haven't decreased the net square footage per employee, but rather the office environment has required us to invest significantly in upgrading the office so that people want to come in. So we're really trying to entice people to come in, and that's increased our cost structure.
Excuse me, I can relate to the salaries increasing. I mean, certainly that's happening in construction as well, especially at those entry-level, mid-level positions. So the cost of our staff is getting higher. When we compete on a job as a construction manager firm, honestly, a lot of what we're doing is making an assumption of the right staff, the right size staff to go tackle a job. We may not even know too much about the job yet, but we've got to lock that in. So with the cost of that staff going up, you would think that the overall cost structure for a staff relative to the overall project, you would think that percentage is going up. I'm actually seeing a trend over the past year where that's not necessarily the case. Yes, our people are getting more expensive, but that percent that of a staff on the project is actually going down. Really, the only way that can happen is we're proposing leaner staffs on the job, or we're proposing on a project with a project engineer now, where maybe it was a project manager in that position in the past. And it's kind of a slippery slope, right? Because of all the the reasons I talked in productivity on why we have to have that team and the right horsepower there. But we're proposing leaner staffs in order to try to be competitive to get projects, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic where we see the cost of staff going up, but how aggressive we have to get in order to get the job is not necessarily staying on that same pace.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely echo what Jennifer said and Paul when it comes to just general salaries. I mean, I think everybody's seen that. That's been significant. Software, IT costs have really kind of been crazy recently in the software by subscription and what that's forced us to do, and the what I like to call the monopoly out there that exists in our industry, that they can just charge us whatever they want for. But it's been crazy to watch that unfold, as I thought at some point the IT costs were going to flatten off and maybe even start to come down. They found a way to go back up, and we're spending a lot of time and effort trying to look at what that looks like for someone like us who has remote employees, multiple offices. How do we get everybody synced up and running efficiently? And those costs have continued to go up. But to Jennifer's point, we're in the middle of a new office here in Columbus. We just finished a new office in Phoenix, and we haven't changed our square footage. We've had that conversation. The square footage per employee is not changing. We've talked about the hoteling and that option. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants anything to do with it, even if you're only in 2 or 3 days a week. So we are investing in the finishes and the activities and the things, the amenities that bring them to the space. We have people in our office Monday and Fridays. It's going to be pretty empty here in Columbus, yet they're all really interested and want to say in what's going into the office space, right? They all have an opinion, and they're all really excited about it, which is great. But to their point, they want what they want, and when they come in, they want something to come in too. So certainly something we pay attention to.
And they want people to be there when they come in.
They do, and the interesting part is when a couple stop coming in, then they decide that's the day nobody's going to come in, because when they're there, they want people to be there. That's why they're there. So, it's...
Is there anything else? What changes to cost structure are you seeing? I should have put this slide up. I think it's pretty interesting what's happening in the cost world, and your comment about leaner projects and a project engineer where you would have had a project manager, and why that's scary, right? Is because to be successful in this industry, requires so much experience, right? So much knowledge. You don't do the same thing over and over and over all day. It's about your technical problem-solving skills and your relationship skills. And if we're jumping people into that sooner, and then they're at home by themselves, and they're not a part of your culture, and they don't see, like Jeff said, how those with experience are solving problems, it's something we need to think about. It's something we need to think about. Some changes to cost structure, software, salaries are up, construction costs have increased. Let me pull some of these back up. Incentives, new metrics, yep. I mean, salaries are the biggest thing, but they're the most important thing, right? Your people are the most important thing. That's why I say salaries are the most important things. Because in order for you to be successful, your people have to be happy. They have to be happy. And that is what is next. So I'll ask the panelists here in the next couple of minutes that we have for one final word about where are we working and how are we working to improve our productivity.
Yeah, well, business as usual, but I mean, I'm learning a few things through the whole pandemic here. I mean, yes, to some extent, we can do more in virtual meetings. I'm not saying that that's not true. You know, I have my fair share of meetings where I will decide that, well, I can sit right here at my desk and I can do this one and it's okay. So I'm guilty as anyone else on that. But I've also learned that when I get out there face to face with people, if I really need to solve a problem, I'm going to them. Right? And that's where I spend the highest percentage of my week is working with other people in person, right? There was a chart early on there. And I've just learned that, right, the more I can get in front of people and I'm helping them solve their problems, I think maybe what it is, if I'm sitting in front of them, they know I'm not going to leave until we figure it out. Maybe that's what it is. But I think we're more productive in that environment than any other environment.
I'll jump in. I would say final thought is our people are everything. And to me, it's just continuing to invest in mentorship. We have an absolute opportunity here, given the workforce changes. We have a lot of baby boomers that are still with us, that are at the tail end of their career. And that on-the-job training, that mentorship program that we can leverage over the next 5 to 10 years is absolutely critical. And, for us, I don't know how real it is to think about not having a hybrid workforce. Now that we're here from a recruitment perspective, it seems a reality that is expected within the design profession.
Yeah, I'll echo the first statement there that Jennifer said is we're 100% about our people. Our firm is only as good as our people. It's been interesting. I heard the gentleman in the back say, we're really young, we're 100% in the office. I have definitely seen our younger individuals migrate to the office. They want to be there. They want to be with each other. They've created their own groups. We have large groups that are in 5 days a week because they just love being there and hanging out together and being part of it. We have the older generation, the baby boomers, which are happy not coming back to the office. I wouldn't have expected it necessarily, but I've actually seen the PM2 levels, the 40s and over, being very happy with a hybrid environment. So I don't know. I've seen the trend of more and more heading back to the office, but I don't believe, as Jennifer said, that we'll ever get back to 100%. Hybrid's here to stay in some way, shape, or form. And I just think we need to listen to our people. They're going to tell us what they need. We need to make sure we're listening to them, making sure that they're getting what they need through the mentorship and the development of their careers. What I think is yet to be seen is, does not being in the office affect your career path or development and ability to lead? And I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good point. Very good point. And I think the moral of the story is you work hard for me and I'll work hard for you, right? That's what we're here to do. So I want to thank you all for your time. And typically we end every session with a plus delta. Where did you find value and where we can improve next time? I'd like to right now focus on, if you wouldn't mind, scanning the QR code one more time, but at least we're not at a restaurant where you go in and you scan the QR code before you even talk to anybody. We're not that bad yet, what we do. On anything and everything, we take a tip. But what are some key takeaways? What did you learn today? One of the things that we're going to do with this is when we regroup tomorrow, we're going to preview some of the key takeaways from each of the sessions that we had today. So thank you all for your time. I'm really glad. I think it warmed up here. It could be that I've been standing the whole time, but thank you for coming in and enduring the cold at the beginning. And Ryan, Jennifer, Paul, it was so great to get to know you, and thank you. Thank you.